I've always felt like in the NFL, the worst possible place to be is in mediocre purgatory, where you're not bad enough to totally and truly suck to get a marquee draft pick, top 5, top 3, maybe even number 1, and then you begin a real rebuild. Not good enough to be in the playoffs, where, yes, you're picking late in round 1, but you might be looking for 1 or 2 players that put you over the hump to potentially win a Super Bowl. You're there in the middle, no real major upside, no real major downside to you. You're just kind of there, and it can become a vicious cycle where you kind of spin your wheels. Never good enough to get to that next step, never bad enough to take that step down that you may need to as an organization. And I look at the Miami Dolphins, and that's kind of one of those teams to me, where they're kind of in a mediocre type of purgatory. Sure, maybe if things break right, they may sneak into the wild card like they did in the 2016 season, but that's not the end game. That's not the ultimate goal. And there's no way you look at this Dolphins team and you envision them as a real contender. And it can become really hard with some of the offseason moves that they made and the salary cap dumps that they had to do to envision this being a team that goes to the playoffs. Maybe this 2018 season will go the path of taking a step back to where the Dolphins can get a marquee pick, but maybe it doesn't with Tannehill coming back. Maybe they're just good enough to win 6 to 8 games, and all this crap doesn't matter. But when you look at how the Dolphins did in the 2018 draft, I look at Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I'm really curious as to whether or not the Dolphins had any plans to take Josh Rosen at pick 11. I always wonder, because they didn't obviously feel enough of an urgency to have to go up to get him. They also didn't feel enough of an urgency to go up and get somebody else. They just stayed put at number 11. And sometimes what happens when you see a team has a player in mind on their board and that player goes right before them, you'll see them ultimately peel back because their plans have kind of changed. It gives them time to adjust, but then they also feel like, hey, the next guy on our board might be there a few picks later. Let's pick up some additional picks. And the Dolphins didn't do that. They just stayed there at pick 11, which makes me believe to some degree that maybe this team didn't really value Rosen that much. They really didn't like Rosen that much. And the guy that they took at 11 was a guy that was very high on their board that they had envisioned potentially taking at 11, and that was the game plan all along. It'll always be one of those curiosities. I wonder if. And they didn't feel strong enough, clearly, to come up and get Lamar Jackson. So to me, that gives me an indication if the Dolphins liked any quarterback in this draft, it was probably Mayfield, Darnold, or Josh Allen. I don't see where they liked Josh Rosen because their actions indicated they weren't eager enough to go up and get him. And they weren't high enough on Lamar because they didn't trade down and then take him, nor did they trade back up into the tail end of round 1 to get him. So it seems like this was the plan, that they were just going to stick to the board. They didn't value any of the quarterbacks that were remaining, and Minkah Fitzpatrick was their guy. And I like Minkah Fitzpatrick. I feel like he could bring something to the table defensively for the Dolphins, some help in that secondary in a variety of ways, potentially in a variety of different positions. But for me, it's like Minkah's good, but Derwin James and Tremaine Edmunds were better, and to me made just as much sense. So it may just be a thing of they valued Minkah more, and that's how they rate him. I don't know if it was just clearly drafting purely off of need. Because if it was drafting clearly off of need, then Tremaine Edmunds may very well have been the guy. But it feels like the Dolphins got a solid pick. I don't know if they've got the impact type of first-round pick that they would maybe really need. Then I look at round 2, Mike Gesicki, the tight end from Penn State, a guy that they may have potentially thought wouldn't end up there. And there was a point in time where I thought he was going to go round 1, and there was talk that the Saints, if they didn't move up for Davenport, were very well set on taking Gesicki at 27, especially once Hurst went 25 to the Ravens. But lo and behold, the Dolphins, who desperately needed help at the tight end position, were able to get a high upside athlete like Gesicki. Now, for me, I'm curious to see how he fits in Adam Gase's offense. I'm not necessarily sold that he's 100% the greatest fit, but that doesn't mean that things can't change and that Gase won't find ways to utilize Gesicki, because he does have athletic upside. Now, he's not going to give you anything as a blocker, somewhat like Colby Fleener in that sense, but if he could be a weapon over the middle of the field, make some big plays happen, that's a really nice thing for a Ryan Tannehill to come into, especially with losing Jarvis Landry. This was a way to replace some of the production potentially that Jarvis Landry brought to the table. Was a explosive, more high upside athlete at a different position like Gesicki. In round 3, Jerome Baker to me felt like a reach. I understand he's an athlete, and he's a really good athlete. But I always felt like when I watched him at Ohio State, he was just kind of running around, and every once in a while he stumbled into a play. But he wasn't really a good football player. Now, that said, I don't have that huge of an issue with it because the Dolphins needed help in speed in that linebacking core, and Baker is definitely going to bring speed to them, and hopefully they get Raekwon McMillan back healthy, and you can feel a little bit better about that Buckeyes. Well, I guess 2/3 of the linebacking core would be Buckeyes if that played out, but the Dolphins linebacking core, which has seemed to be a bit of an issue for years, could potentially be better. Like I said, though, I thought there were better players on the board and better linebackers on the board than Baker at that stretch. In the 4th round, I thought they did all right. It's interesting. They were double dipping in the tight end position. But if you're going to take Gesicki in round 2, you have to understand what he is and what he isn't. And what he isn't is an inline blocker. Durham Smythe is going to be an inline blocker for you. He's like that prototype number 2 type of solid all-around tight end. Not spectacular, but can catch a few balls. Almost like an Anthony Fasano type. And if you get an Anthony Fasano type in round 4, you haven't done that badly for yourself. And then I look at Kalen Ballage, the running back from Arizona State. This is all athlete and gamble on that athletic upside and him being able to figure it out. But you're talking about a guy that's 6'1", 220 or so pounds, runs in the 4.4s, and in round 4, you've traded away Jay Ajayi. It most certainly is worth the gamble on Ballage. It most certainly is. Because maybe you look at Drake and Williams as your running back tandem and you're not fully sold. Kalen Ballage, in terms of his athletic profile, could be a 3-down guy. Now, there are concerns that he's more athlete than running back or football player, which I share those concerns. But in round 4, this feels like a really, really good pick and definitely worth the gamble. As it's not every day you get athletes like that at the running back position that time in day 3. Usually it's guys that are too slow or they're too small or they're big but they can't catch the ball. Ballage isn't any of those guys. So I thought that was a pretty solid piece of work right there. But when I look at this draft for the Dolphins, and I personally know some Dolphins fans, I work with some Dolphins fans, and there were a couple of them that were on board with getting somebody, specifically I think it was Baker Mayfield, and some of them were just completely and totally opposed to the idea of drafting a quarterback and wanted no part of it, and I understand that, and I can't blame them, and I think some of you on here share that same sentiment. But I'm really curious what Dolphins fans feel about this draft, because for me, as I look at it, sometimes you look at a team's draft and you can see that they were going best player available, or they were going athletes, or they were going this, or they were clearly addressing deficiencies and needs in certain areas. I'm having a hard time piecing together what exactly the Miami Dolphins were doing in this draft. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an immediate failure of a draft or a bad draft necessarily. It's just, what's the identity of the Dolphins in this draft? What were they trying to establish as an identity for their team? Now you've gotten rid of guys like Sue and Pouncey. What's your identity going forward? And I'm just not really sure what exactly they were trying to do here. Now I could say defensively, they were focusing on getting better athletes there with Fitzpatrick and Baker, maybe getting some guys with versatility. But in both cases, I feel like they passed up on better players on the board on the defensive side of the ball. Gesicki obviously fills a hole at the tight end position and is a way to try and replace some of the production lost with the departure of Jarvis Landry. But they didn't address the wide receiver position one time in this draft. And I was really surprised by that and felt like somewhere between rounds 2 and 4, they should have addressed it. Instead of maybe worrying about addressing the number 2 tight end spot, maybe you worry about getting somebody that could potentially play at the wide receiver position. Now, you could swing Gesicki out wide, and it's kind of like a wide receiver, and that is true, but you get what I'm saying. So for me, this is one of these drafts for the Dolphins that I think a couple of these guys pan out, and I think a couple of these guys don't. I could see some ways where they were gambling on athletic upside and versatility, and I get that. But it feels like the type of draft that a mediocre team would do. It's not going to be so overwhelmingly bad where in a year or two they'll be picking in the top 3 because of the failure of this draft. But it's also not the type of draft that's going to help the team take another step and put them in the playoff mix. It's just kind of there, which is appropriate because that's what the Miami Dolphins are. Just kind of there.